My response to them was constantly, because I don't want to be going off of vibes. I want to be careful of my biases. I want to be careful of my preferences. I want to believe true things, and I don't want to believe false things. And even if I did want to believe false things, I take that into account and I try to be careful of that. Like, okay, you want to believe that, so you probably ought to inspect it more because you want to believe it.
Word up, guys. This is Sage, and we are going to jump into this reaction video to a video about the Bible, whether, it's wrong or right about belief and unbelief. And this is with Be Good, and his channel is Ichapod. He always takes some call ins on his shows. He streams every now and then, especially Monday and Tuesday. We're just going to check out this portion. I was watching this live and I sent a super chat to spark more conversation. And it's along the lines of what he was talking about. So let's look into it.
Rockin', thank you for the $5 super chat. It's Sage. Appreciate that. And said vibes is the biggest religion right now to determine truth and lies. And somebody on my Facebook just asked the question, like, they asked me, do I inspect my own worldview like I try to inspect Christianity or other worldviews?
And that's a good question. For me, we have to inspect and reflect on how we came to our conclusions for the beliefs that we hold. Is it because of preference? Is it because we desire to believe a certain thing? Or is it that we were seeking truth and we look at the evidence and we went wherever the evidence led us? So you have to decide, are you coming to truth unbiased? I mean, we're going to have some bias within us, but we try to look at the truth, see where it leads us, look at the evidence, look at the proof, and then we come to our conclusion. That's the way that I typically look at it, but let's continue.
Views. My response to them was constantly, because I don't want to be going off of vibes. I want to be careful of my biases. I want to be careful of my preferences. I want to believe true things, and I don't want to believe false things. And even if I did want to believe false things, I take that into account and I try to be careful of that. Like, okay, you want to believe that, so you probably ought to inspect it more because you want to believe it. It's the things that you want to believe that you probably should inspect more, because wanting to believe it puts you in danger of what's called motivated reasoning.
Right. Motivated reasoning is where you're pushing to a certain result instead of looking at where it leads. You want to take the steering wheel and put it on a route that it's not really built for. And yeah, you have to be very careful with your desire to believe and make sure it doesn't taint the way you analyze the data in front of you.
Motivated reasoning is giving an unfair advantage to the views that you favor instead of looking at everything on an even playing field. No, I don't want to give unfair advantage to the things that I favor. And so I don't want to be going off of vibes. I want to be going off of, where does the evidence lead?
Right. When analyzing these things, you want to just look at the facts, look at the numbers, look at the different things to figure out, okay, and you have to come into this with the giving permission to yourself to disagree with something that you held very strongly, or giving yourself permission to see the flaws in your thinking, whatever you used to believe or whatever you believed, You have to be able to look at them and see, okay, I need to give myself permission to say, this doesn't make sense, and not do acrobats to make it fit what you desire.
Somebody said that my mic needed to come up a little bit. I did turn it up. Hopefully you heard that and it's better now. Super chat from me no no. What's up, me no no? Thanks for the super chat. Says, think I agree. We can't choose our beliefs. So should we then refrain from valuing open-mindedness, willingness to listen, and change one's mind? Vince.
I think that it's true that I know a lot of people, some people disagree with this, but what you can't control what you are convinced of. You can act like you believe something, but what you truly believe and what you think is true is what you're actually convinced of. You can't trick yourself into being convinced that something else is true when it's not, especially in your heart of hearts and in your mind, you're not convinced. So, but in the Bible, it makes it seem like beliefs are chosen, when really it has to do with what you're convinced of. And from my view, I think that the Bible has the wrong view on how beliefs are engraved in us. It's not a choice.
Let me think about the second part of that. Should we refrain from valuing open-mindedness, willingness to change one's mind? I need to spend some time thinking about this because just before that last call, Mythos Boy said something that made me think. He said, I don't even think he meant it the way I took it, but the way I took it just opened my mind up to if there are different levels of claims, you know what I mean? The claims that are more unbelievable should take higher evidence. Are there claims that are so low? And I guess what do we mean when we say low? What's at stake for believing it? Like if you tell me you went to Red Lobster last night, what's at stake if I believe you versus if I disbelieve you? Nothing.
That's a good question. Nothing. It's kind of like making the claim that Tom has 5 comic books sitting on his shelf at home. Now, what's at stake? Whether if you believe it or if you don't believe it, there's nothing really at stake. And it's a mundane claim. It's something that doesn't require a lot of evidence because you can believe it without looking at the evidence because you already have a pattern of evidence already in the backlog of life where people have comic books and comic books exist. You've seen them, you've touched them, and they're very common.
Things at stake. And how much work am I willing to put into finding out whether you went to Red Lobster? I'm not willing to really put any work into it. So at that point, I have to just decide, do I believe that claim and do I not? And I think with claims like that, because they're not unbelievable, because they're not implausible, and they're not improbable, I'm willing to believe it. But that doesn't mean I'm choosing to believe it. That just means I'm, and see, it's really hard. Hopefully, I won't lose y'all in saying this. Because if I say I'm willing to accept that as true, doesn't the idea of being willing almost demand that it was a choice? If I say I'm willing to, doesn't it mean I chose to? I need to spend some time thinking about that because saying I'm willing to accept that, it's not, to me, that's not as simplistic as saying I chose to accept that you went to Red Lobster. It's not that simple. It's not just that I'm choosing to believe it. You tell me I got a new dog. A couple of years ago, I did this thought experiment on Facebook, where I told people I got a new dog named Jesus, which of course is Spanish for Jesus.
This is a really good experiment to see, well, how much work. I think that depending on the claim, the level of the claim, The level of the claim has to equal the level of work, or the level of work that you put in when a claim is presented to you. It has to match. They both have to match. If it's something very trivial, then the work will be not as rigorous, you might say.
And the whole story about me with this dog was a week-long metaphor. I kept telling stories about the dog that if you listen long enough, you realize like, oh wait, that story about the dog is a dog version of the Jesus story. And people were catching on day by day, like, oh, I see what you're doing. You didn't really get a dog. But at first, they were all congratulating me on this new dog. They were willing to accept my story as true. Does that mean because the term will is involved, does that mean that they chose to believe it? I don't think it's that simple. And look, the call line is open. I'll post the link in the chat again and click on where it says call in and you can call in. But back to the story. If somebody was willing to believe my dog story, does that mean they chose to believe it? I don't think being willing to accept something as true is the same as choosing to believe it. Because like I said, when we're willing to accept something as true, I think subconsciously, even automatically, we go through a process of deduction where we ask ourselves, is this story impossible? Well, no. I've seen people get new dogs. I got a new dog when I was a kid, so it's not impossible. Is this story implausible? Like maybe you would need to know my financial situation, or you would need to know whether or not I was allergic to dogs or something. But barring knowing any of that, you would say that, well, it's not implausible.
You have to go through those stages in your mind. Some people go through these stages in their mind when they hear a claim, and it could be any claim. They go through that process within a split second, or they think on it for a while. It depends on the claim, though. It depends on the claim that one is making, whether it's a big claim, extraordinary claim. The bigger the claim, the more you have to go through this process where you got to go through this reasoning process and investigation to get to a conclusion or get to a verdict about that claim.
Is it improbable? Right? You went to Red Lobster last night? Wait, didn't you tell me that you were in, and let's just say you named the place that I know there's no Red Lobsters there?
So you're doing like a Judge Judy interrogation within you as you're thinking about these things and as you're assessing the person making the claim and assessing the claim. You have to ask these different questions if it's a really, really big claim. But if the claim doesn't have any consequence totally, then you're not going to be as rigorous, like I said, in the investigation.
Well, at that point, it's not impossible because you could have made it back to some other place where there is a Red Lobster. But I just saw a picture of you posted a half hour ago, and it looked like you were still in that place. So it's not impossible that you made it to a Red Lobster, but it is improbable that between the time you posted that pic and now that you made it back to it. So I think we go through the steps of, is it impossible? Is it implausible? Is it improbable? And if not, and there's no, like, the stakes are not so high that I have to decide whether I'm going to do the work to investigate it. To say after going through all that, and somebody could be watching saying, come on, don't nobody go through all that before they believe something. I think we actually do. I think we run it through the grid of possibility, plausibility, and probability. And
We do. We definitely do. It just goes through a split second sometimes, and sometimes it goes through a period of time. People don't realize that they do it, but it's subconscious. And we got to look at, what is it's called reflecting, just looking at how we think. If we sit back and actually think, well, how do I think about things, and how do I come to the conclusions that I'm coming to?
Then I think we also take into account, am I willing to do the work to vet this story? Probably not. And we also take into account, what am I going to get out of vetting this story? Because if you tell me you got $1 million for me, if I can just make it to Tucson, Arizona before 9 o'clock tonight, like, is it worth me chartering a jet to make it to Tucson before 9 o'clock tonight? Because it might be worth doing all. Am I going to believe you then? Because I guess what you're hearing me wrestle through is choice involved in believing, or are we really going through this checklist of, is it worth it? Is it possible, probable, plausible? Can I vet this story? And we go through all that, and based on that real quick math, we decide. Even saying decide makes it sound like a choice, right? Yeah, I think what you're hearing me wrestle through what I think is a subconscious process we go through that makes it, and maybe this is what I'm willing to say, it makes it feel like choice, but really it's not choice, it's deduction. And so when the believer tells the unbeliever, we ought to just believe, what they don't realize is, I've gone through the deduction of, is this possible? Well, I guess that God could do a miracle. Is this plausible? Well, let me see the story you're telling about that miracle. Is there any evidence for this miracle? Is it probable? And in light of all that, we're going through this process of deduction and ending on belief or unbelief. And I think when we think about it that way, that might explain why belief could feel like a choice, but really it's not a choice. What it is after that deduction process, I'm left with this. I can only believe you got a new dog, or you went to Red Lobster, or you have $1 million. I can only disbelieve it after having gone through this process.
Right. He hit the head right on the nail. He hit the target on this explanation. I like the way he explained it. We go through this process. We peel away the layers one by one to figure out, do we believe this or do we not believe this? And people take for granted the way that we come to our conclusions, especially Christians talking to non-Christians like us, or like talking to people who have deconstructed or left the faith. They think that people just go to a snappy decision with these kind of things. They think, now some people do, but they assume the person who doesn't believe didn't go through this process. And we got to be careful about that. They have to be careful about that. I have to be careful as somebody who left the faith to look back and look at why this person still believes. And I have to make sure that I'm not coming to any false conclusions about them and the way that they came to their conclusion. So this is an interesting video. It was pretty good. And if you want to see the rest of this live or any of the videos on his channel, make sure to visit Ichapod and subscribe if you like his content. Hosted by Be Good, and also subscribe to my channel if you like the videos that I put out there and my content. It's Sage at It's Sage of. Subscribe to my channel. Comment below. Tell me what you think about this. Is the Bible wrong about belief and unbelief? Are we wrong about belief or unbelief? Is it a choice? So just let me know. And remember, the links are in the description below for the original video. And I'll see you guys later. Peace.